All right, thanks for being here. The big beautiful bill, as it's being called, over 1,000 pages and a lot in it. And there are some critics of it, even within the Republican Party. There were a couple of no votes from Republican members of the House, and there were a couple of non-votes. But to get all the lowdown on all of this, the person we always turn to, the expert when it comes to taxes and finances and budgets, is Congressman David Schweikert. Congressman, welcome back.
Yeah, it is nice to be back. It was a long week.
Yeah. You know, I could see on the speaker's face when it was finally done that it seemed like he had just finished a marathon. So let's start with this. Can you explain why you did not vote on this? There's been a lot of speculation.
Oh no, there's not been a lot of speculation. If you actually read the medium, we put out the. I had gone 36 hours straight. I was one of the negotiators because obviously, I chaired the Joint Economic Committee. So I had the economist. So we're running the numbers and had finished building an agreement with the speaker because remember, as soon as we finished this, we started another reconciliation bill, went down the hallway to change my shirt. And next thing I know, I'm holding a cup of coffee and my phone is ringing saying the vote is on. I'd fallen asleep. And I raced back to the floor, and you had a member vote present, meaning the vote went up one vote to pass, and they threw the gavel as I walked in the door. And I'm here waving my arms. Look, it's embarrassing, but you immediately then go to the clerk and file how you would have voted, and I did. So, look, embarrassing. Speaker was very kind to me in his press conference. He explained, I had been one of the negotiators going almost 36 hours straight, and they threw the gavel right at the very end of the clock.
Okay, I just didn't know what the answer was. We'd heard that. I had heard that about Representative. Is it Garbarino? Is that how you pronounce his last name?
And Garbarino's, and he means well. He fell asleep in the back of the room, and no one actually. Because it's hard to describe this. I was functionally the only Republican that also offered rules changes, and that really made a number of even my own Republicans angry. But I showed up with another $2 trillion in savings, and that took 20 hours straight. So this and for anyone listening, there's still miles and miles to go on this piece of legislation. It's on its way over to the Senate. The Senate's going to recraft it. They're going to send it back. We'll have another vote probably to send it to conference committee. I believe I'll be one of the conferees who will negotiate there. Mm-hmm. Then we'll send it back to each body to be voted on the conference committee report, and then there'll be another vote to basically, its final read. We still have a lot of work to do.
What are the key components that people need to know about this? I'm going to
okay.
Go ahead.
The single thing that frustrates me the most, even just listening to your newscast, what is the number one reason this piece of legislation is being done? In less than a half a year, your taxes go up.
Yeah.
So in 2017, there was a major tax reform to get everything to work in the budget box. A whole bunch of the individual tax rate changes that we all received expire next year. So in 2026, it's not that long away. Every working person that you pay income tax, your taxes are going up. Well, that right there is the vast majority of this bill. Now you have the next problem. How do you try to at least offset some of that loss of tax revenues? Because the way the fancy people that do the economic scoring say, everyone's taxes goes up next year, we're going to put that into the baseline of the budgets. We're trying not to have everyone's taxes go up next year. Now, how do you find some offsets for that? And much of it is now looking at what was done during the pandemic and those things, where a lot of things were just expanded to folks that had never received benefits. They were supposed to be temporary. And during the Biden administration, they kept extending these things and making them permanent. So it's the classic, we make a deal in the federal government, and as long as it's more spending, they look the other way and they just keep extending those spendings.
One of a couple of key things that I was looking at that are concerns for people, and we've heard some of the Democrats in the House and our two senators talking about cuts to Medicaid, that they're going to and food stamps and food assistance programs, that a lot of that's going to now be the burden of the states. Can you address a couple of those things?
Yeah. First off, let's walk through some of the expanded populations. Arizona already has an application in that for work requirements. So the very thing that some folks are saying, you're asking people to, participate in the economy if you're able-bodied, because that was one of the things that had never been done before. And during part of Obamacare, or the Obamacare debates, and then during the pandemic, extending benefits to prime-age males who, were eligible for work, but then not having work requirements. Arizona already has an application in to do that waiver. So that's coming with this bill or without this bill. And there becomes one of the great frustrations. You even look at access, our Medicaid system in Arizona. Mm-hmm. And I know this well because over my lifetime, I've actually helped administer parts of this. We broke the deal. Years ago, when Arizona was the last state to enter Medicaid in the mid-'80s, it was a 50-50 deal. It was sort of split some of the, but it was for, children and truly indigent healthcare. That's actually was its name. And the game has been to keep expanding it. And during part of the Obama administration, they actually took almost prime-age populations, said, hey, we'll give you a 90-10 split instead of the 50-50 on the dollar amounts. So all that money we send to the state is borrowed at the federal government level, and then the state set up this system where they raise taxes on the providers, grab those taxes and use it to meet their match, and then put a big chunk of that in the general fund of the state. So they've created a sort of scam washing machine. That was money, it was for health care, and they're using it to spend in other ways. And that money is borrowed at the federal government level. So there's a couple of great charts. We've actually published a couple of them that when people see this, they go, oh, that's what's actually going on. And much of the noise you hear about this, let's be a bit cynical, is from those organizations, businesses, healthcare providers that actually make money on this sort of bait and switch.
When you the criticisms from Republicans that voted against this and some that voted for it said it doesn't go far enough with spending cuts. Do you agree that we should have cut more spending, and would it have not been possible to do so?
That's what the negotiations were about, because in a reconciliation, you can never touch Social Security. So I've already had a couple of my Democrat colleagues say, Social Security, that's against the law. So if you're a Democrat running around saying that, please stop. You're lying to people. We have a debt and deficit problem that's insanely dangerous. At the same time, you're trying not to have, for people in my community, my district, where you and I live, I think the mean tax hike was around $3,000 plus dollars that was going to happen next year. Mm-hmm. Well, what does that do to the economy and consumption and those things? If tomorrow everyone's taxes go up that dramatically, biggest tax hike in U.S. history if that were allowed to not be stopped. And so here's where we're going is there are other things we can do offsets, but it's hard. I have some of my friends running around saying, well, the DOJ has taken care of everything. Go to their website. It's like doge.gov. They have a number of, they've identified about $170 billion next year that could, okay, let's say you got every dime of that. That's about 25 days of borrowing. Mm-hmm. And there's the problem. There's just this almost, and Republicans and Democrats both, I'm just disappointed almost everyone. No one's running around with a calculator saying, understand, here's the how we're trying to balance this. I'm not thrilled with this bill. I am sort of thrilled with the negotiations we have because there's a continuum here. This is number one. There's a number two coming right after it. And I think that's actually where, we'll have gotten rid of the cliff that was coming, and now we can actually start to do some of the spending mitigation and try to flatten out a little bit of this curve for the next 10 years. And we're still going to borrow stunning amounts of money over the next 10 years because it's demographics and interest are what drives the U.S. debt.
Well, Congressman, I appreciate you coming on and clearing some things up with this and kind of giving us some of the facts of what's in this. As the negotiations go forward, when we finally get to the end of what this is going to look like in the end, I hope you'll come back and explain that to us as well.
And Mike, I really appreciate you not teasing me too much for having fallen asleep because all my fellow members of Congress have teased me. One sent me eye patch, sleeping eye shades. So I'm getting screwed with enough by my colleagues.
I've actually had the privilege of sitting in the House chamber while you guys are in session, and so I can understand why someone might fall asleep. So,
well, this was unlike anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And this was very different than 2017.
Yeah, 36 hours that's a marathon.
I'm never trying to do
hours.
36 hours again without sleep because I was almost shaking by the time it was done.
Well, I hope to talk to you soon.
A lot of coffee.
Yeah, get some rest.
Bye.
Thanks, Congressman. All right, that's Congressman David Schweikert.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Tap to watch and listen to the new season of Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast. You can also click the button in the middle to subscribe.